Hello. Hi everyone. Am I audible? Okay. So the name of the talk when I submitted was the ultimate refactoring cheat sheet. But then when I sat down to make the presentation, I realized, come on, whom am I fooling? You cannot have the ultimate cheat sheet, and at least you cannot explain everything in 20 minutes. You can probably just browse through the entire cheat sheet in 20 minutes, maybe. Okay, so don't hit me if you were expecting the ultimate cheat sheet. Who am I? I'm a first-time speaker at any conference, so please be gentle. No tomatoes. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I'm a very humble Ruby on Rails. I call myself an entrepreneur now. I'm currently building Let's Code Bro, which, as Ben had talked about pair programming, it lets you discover people you can pair program with. It's instead of just going and tweeting pair with me. I was working previously with Fab, Zynga, and those are my tags, Murtuza and Murtuza KZ on GitHub. Okay. The most important thing about this talk. Why am I here? Why did I fly from India to come so far to South Africa to speak about refactoring? Was it actually to speak about refactoring and writing pure code? Well, to be honest, please don't record this. No. I wanted to see South Africa, and and this helped a lot. Okay, now we can turn it back on. So yeah, I came here to actually speak about code because I really care about writing pure, really good tested code, refactored code, and not shitty code. But I would like to admit that I've written a lot of shitty code in my in the past 2 years that I've been writing code, and I don't even want to talk about it. It stinks. Okay, so one disclaimer. There are going to be too many disclaimers in this talk. First of all, I started with the ambition, as I mentioned already, to make it the ultimate cheat sheet, but it's not possible to cover all of that. The second disclaimer is I'm going to be covering only 3 techniques of refactoring, which I've used a lot, and which I think any intermediate or beginner Ruby developer could straight away go to his app and be able to make this refactor without having too much knowledge of refactoring, tests, and all this crazy stuff. One is the extract method, one is the introduce a null object, and the third one is replace array with object. If I'm being too fast, just let me know. And yeah, last disclaimer, I promise. So I was reading this book, Refactoring, improving the design of existing code, and there's one refactoring technique which is called pull-up field, and right below it, there's a refactoring technique called push-down field. I'm like, what the hell? I mean, just now I read about pull-up field, and now we're saying push-down field. So each refactoring that you apply is very subjective. It's going to depend on the scenario of your code. So, if it doesn't fit your needs, don't hit me. And it's going to get, more and more obvious as to what technique you're going to be using with experience, and you probably should, pair program a lot, because that'll help, especially with experts. You'll get to know what refactoring techniques you could use at which situations. Okay, so this is the inspiration. This is where I've shamelessly copied a lot of my talk from. I'm sure everyone knows about this book. Is there anyone who doesn't know? Come on, be honest. Yeah, see, that guy's honest. Okay, good. It's called Improving the Design of Existing Code. It's an amazing book. Highly recommend reading it. Okay, so, as with any refactoring talk, tradition is you explain what a code smell is. Well, it's basically that. When you're like that, after you see a piece of code, that's a code smell. To go for the proper definition is a surface indication that usually corresponds to a deeper problem in the system. But forget that. It's just, no, not good. Okay, so enough said. I'll start off with the first technique. It's not long methods. It's long Because when I first started working, on my first week of job, I was asked to write a particular feature, and the function that I had to make the change in was already 600 lines. Yeah, exactly. It was already 600 lines, and I contributed 100 more lines to it. So thank you very much. but come on, I was a novice, beginner. I was a newbie. I didn't even know anything. So forgive me. But so what are long methods? How do you define long methods? Because long is a very subjective word, right? For someone actually 600 lines was not long, but for someone else it could be 5 lines. So there's a really good blog post by Avdi Grimm which says if you got more than 5 lines of code in your method, it's probably long and it's doing more than one thing. So yeah, my definition, that's what I've tried to stick to whenever I write apps, whenever I write features, whatever I write. If I write more than 5 lines, which kind of do similar thing, I try to extract it out into a separate method and not pollute the existing method. Yeah, Avdi's got my back. See, it's not what I'm saying, okay? It's already there by experts. Avdi Grimm said that, so you can catch him and hit him if you want. So if you feel like there's a need to comment a particular section of code, that's a divine indication, that you need to take it out into a separate method. So God's going to be talking to you. The other developers, their souls are going to be talking to you. When they've written comments there, dude, refactor, man, come on. What are you waiting for? So why? Okay, let it be 600 lines. So what's the problem? Everyone loves reading through stories, pages of code. First thing is it's hard to test. I'm damn sure you're not going to be testing if you've got 600 lines of code, but still, it's hard to test. There's way too much logic stuffed in, to understand what's happening. If, for example, when I was to write the feature that I wanted to write and there were 600 lines of code already in there, you can just imagine when I started reading and by the time I was done, it was lunchtime. So I went and had my lunch and I forgot what the hell was the function doing. I came back, I started reading again, and it went on and on and on until someone just smashed me and said, okay, this is what it does. So there's too much logic going to be there, and you don't want that to happen because future developers who are going to take over your code, they need to understand very easily what's written there and what they need to change. And yeah, it's bug friendly. If you want to be living like this, do write long methods. Okay, so what's the refactor here? How do I refactor my long method codes? Well, it's a big secret, but I'll give it to you. Writing small methods. That's the refactor. How do you do that? Is the technique is called extract method. So if the technique name that I'm giving is from the book that I showed earlier. So what you have to do is you just find out groups or chunks of code which look like they're doing something similar. It's one functionality. Those 5 lines are doing one thing, and the remaining 5 lines are doing something else. You take those 5 lines out into a separate method, and just call that method from this long method. It's obviously not that simple. There are lots of things that you need to take care about, like there's going to be temporary variables that are going to be used across the entire method. That's a separate refactor in itself. And why would you do this? Because they are easier to test, they are easier to read, they are easier to understand, and obviously change. But I think when I started reading this book and I started implementing the refactors that I learned from this book, so every place in the app where I found more than 5 or 6 lines, of course I started refactoring them, taking the methods into their own functions and calling them from here. And I had colleagues saying, dude, what the hell are you doing, man? When I'm trying to debug your code, I'm jumping around from here to here to here to here to here. I just forget where I came from. At least if it's in one method, I know I'm in this method. Even if I'm reading 600 lines, it's in that one method. So that's the disadvantage, is that you'll be jumping across different methods. But I still think it's way better than having 600 lines of code, all in one function. And yeah, some people say, dude, you should not have so many methods, because method calls are costlier, and it's going to slow down your app so much that the person will not even be able to open the page. Well, you're kidding me, right? Okay, yeah, so this is my last disclaimer, I promise, and it's coming in between. Please, please, please don't try these without tests. So how many of you see WWE or wrestling? Nobody? Oh, some people do. Okay. So you would have seen this, right? Don't try these steps at home, blah, blah, blah. Don't try these without test because you're not going to like me after that if you do. The second refactor that I'm going to talk about is introducing the null object. This usually, happens. I mean, how many of you in your apps have, if current user is present, do this, else do this, in a, infinite number of places? Come on, be honest, please. Yeah, some people are honest, see? I have them in mind too. And this this technique is basically, to avoid that code smell, because you are duplicating your code. You are making the check once again. Every place, current user present, current user present, current user blank, what should I do? So you introduce a new kind of a user, and I'm just giving an example of a user. It could just be anything. It could probably be a subscription, paid subscription, free subscription, temporary subscription. So you take it out into a separate class in itself called the nil user or no user or ghost user, and you define the same API that you have on your user that you would probably need. So instead of making a check if current user.present, get current user.orders, else get an empty array, you just do current user.orders. And your current user is either going to be a nil user or an actual user, and the user API is going to have an orders function which is going to get the stuff, and in nil user it's just going to give you an empty array. So that kind of cleans up a lot of conditional and switch statements that you're going to have in your code. Yeah, that's about it. Right. So I mean, as I mentioned, right, we have this in a lot, at least I used to have it in a lot of places. Whenever I did a current user.present check, I think I got more than 500 results in the search, and that's not good. That should not happen. So the refactor is you create a subclass out of the source class to act as the null version of the class. You don't have to implement the entire API actually, because you could just get away with implementing the subset which you're checking most of the time and using it, and that should be enough. Okay, it looks really shabby. I didn't have my laptop for the last 3 days, so I'm really sorry. I apologize for this. It's at least readable, right? Yeah. So as I mentioned about the orders example, you could have a nil user which inherits from user, and you have the orders function defined on it, which just gives an empty array, and your user will actually get the orders from the table. And when you're using it in your code, you just mention, instead of doing current users or present get orders, else get this. This looks way cooler, right? You just do current user or orders, that's it. And wherever you were assigning your current user earlier, you either assign it to a nil user or to a proper user from the user table. Yeah, so this is once again, my colleagues and a lot of people have showed this kind of code. They say, dude, why do you want to write the same function in 2 separate places doing similar things? Well, I think it's way more cleaner to have a clear set of API, because when it also makes it easier when you're reading about an user, when you read the class, you get to know its exact responsibility. You see, this guy's got no orders because you're able to see it from the class itself. You don't have to go around in your code base looking at what's supposed to show up for a nil user or an actual user. So it kind of makes it really clear what his responsibilities are. All right, this is my favorite one. The actual refactor technique is called replace array with an object, but I've modified it a little bit and I'm calling it replace hash with object, because okay, what's happened is sometimes in the previous workspaces when I've written code, you're sending out arrays of hashes, which is basically let's say you're talking about products. So each entry in the array is going to be a hash. It's going to have the product name. It's going to have the product price. It's going to have when it's going to expire, whether it's accessible to this user or not, blah blah blah. And it's all inside a hash. And all your logic is inside the views. Okay, whether should I show this price to this user? What kind of price should I be showing for another user? Whether it's available for this user. So all these logic is inside your view layer using the fields from the array object that you sent. And I don't really like that, because what you would rather do is, you should have probably a class just to represent that object for the view, probably call it product view, and instantiate that class and send that as an object instead of just sending it as a hash. Because what you're going to do is in the future, when a stupid developer like me comes along in your company, and when if he sees that kind of code, what he's going to do is he's going to write another line inside the views, okay, if this field is this, then you do this, else you do something else. Rather now what he would do is he would go to the product view class, he'll define a function which will be probably tested, and it's going to give the output. So yeah, the main aim is you're able to test your logic in the views as well if you have a class which defines the object that goes inside the view. For example, as I mentioned about products, you have the name, you have our price, then you have the maximum price that is available at competitors, companies and stuff. You have expires at, and when you have an array of these objects that are sending to views, you're going to be having checks like, if our price is less than the competitor price, only then show it. Obviously, otherwise don't show it, because you don't want to show, right, okay, I'm selling it at 70, but that guy is selling it at 60. Then you have the expires at, which probably would say, whether or not to show this product, or just show it as sold or expired. So all this logic, instead of keeping it in the views, you're going to be having it in a separate class, which can be easily tested, of course. Yeah, so an example, so there are 2 lines of code. I'm not sure if they're really readable. So if you can see the third line, the 2_show question mark, it basically determines whether or not I want to show this product. And there's already a mistake, it says expirest instead of expires at. So if the product has already expired, then you do not show, else you show. So these kind of logic, you're removing it from your code base in the views, and you're keeping it in a separate class. Similarly, the second example as well. The refactor is pretty simple. You create a new class to represent the information in that array or a hash. You have the array of the objects, instead of the hashes, and you define the entire behavior on those classes. That's it. That's very simple. Thank you. You all can wake up now. My last disclaimer, I promise. If you ask me questions and if I cannot answer, please don't beat me up. Okay, you guys have any questions? Yeah. Yes. Exactly, exactly. Right. I didn't get your name. Can I just give you a name again? Nelson. So what Nelson is saying is, when you're refactoring those 600 lines of code into separate methods, and if each of the smaller method is named really well, like, if it's, okay, do this, when this, blah, 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 with underscores. Even though the name is, long, but it kind of tells what exactly that method is doing. So the next person will not actually have to go there and see what it's doing. He can just read through. It'll be like a story for him. Okay, this, blah, 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 and he's done with the code. I totally agree with you. But yeah, there are some people who are not really in the favor of having really long names as well. But it's a personal opinion. I'm so happy you guys don't have questions. Any others? Hey, man. Extract method, yeah.
And you want to, say you have a really big method that you're going to start testing and start running that out.
Right.
What step?
All right, so I'll give you an answer, but before that, there's an amazing talk on Confreaks. It's called Therapeutic Refactoring. You should see that. So the way to do that would be, you have a 600-line method and you want to start testing, and obviously you don't understand, what's happening there. So you just start off with a call to the function and see what you're getting back. And if you're getting back, let's say this method expected on this object, then you start, stubbing out your objects that way. So you incrementally build your test for that function, and then later on when you dispose of that function into separate functions, you can just do it with that code as well. But the way is you just blindly, you don't even see the code, don't even see what's there. Just see the name, just see what's being passed, and just pass nil, and see what error you're getting. Based on the errors, you kind of do error-driven testing, and you keep building your tests. Sorry.
We use Copilot to test how, the quality of code, and I noticed that, when we break methods up by files of explain, we end up with lots of methods that they change on top of each other, and that's considered through Copilot as code style, massive complexity. So, is there a way to create new methods that combine other methods and then use those methods to run on your result set?
I'm not really sure if I got your question completely. Are you trying to ask that if you take a long method out into smaller methods, then you're doing a lot of method chaining, A dot B dot C dot D dot E, something like that?
Yeah, and that's sometimes considered through some of these code reviews.
Yeah. Yeah, actually I think that is bad because not entirely sure what the right way to do would be, but I don't think I don't know, man. Seriously. If you do find out, do let me know. But I've heard definitely. I've read about it that having multiple chaining of too long a chaining is definitely bad. Yeah, you can answer. All right, sure. So making sure that when you're defining a method here, it's automatically defined. Well, I've not come across a tool which informs you that you've got a method defined here which you haven't got defined here, so something might break. But I think it's a conscious thing that you need to keep in mind when you've got multiple, like for example, nil user or user. When you're defining something user, you also need to think about what would happen if the user was not there, and then probably go and define its alternative in the other class as well. But I'm not aware of any tools which are out there.
You can write a test that says that the user behaves in a certain way so that it can be presented in view, and then you just pass a null object to that same test.
All right.
And it passes both when it means a bunch of.
Yeah.
So you just have to maintain the test and then test.
Yeah. You heard him, right? Okay, thank you. Cool, thank you. Thanks for
No come electro por la vida.